This is one of the biggest stories in the history of this nation. The Supreme Court taking up whether or not a president is immune from prosecution for things they did in their official duties as president. Of course, I am of the opinion a president is in fact criminally immune unless or until they are impeached and convicted in Congress. Only then can they be criminally charged. And I'm the person who thinks Barack Obama should be criminally charged over the death of Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki, a 16-year-old American citizen who was killed in Yemen. Donald Trump may have done many bad things. Maybe he didn't do any bad things. I don't know. What I can tell you is this. The criminal charges pertaining to January 6th, for which Donald Trump was impeached, ended there. He was not convicted in the Senate. That is to say, the system by which we have checks and balances says, no, we do not agree with this. Call it political, call it whatever you want. I don't know. The fact remains, if we allow a president to be criminally charged without being impeached for his official duties, this means that any time a president wins an election, the opposing party with power in various states will file criminal charges. More importantly, what we're looking at right now, very simply, could be the end of our democracy. Well, we're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic with democratic electoral institutions. But no need to get too into the weeds. We're not a democracy, but certainly Rachel Maddow and it was the other MSNBC guy. I don't even know his name. They're losing their minds. They don't understand what is going on with SCOTUS. Or they're just outright lying. I want to keep it simple for you guys. Supreme Court basically said, okay, here's what's going to happen. We are going to postpone the criminal trial from the Biden DOJ against Donald Trump so that we can determine whether or not Donald Trump is immune from prosecution. There's two things to consider. A broad and narrow ruling from the Supreme Court. Now, this will take place at the end of April, which means the criminal trial will not take place. We don't know exactly how long it will take for the Supreme Court to hear the arguments and then ultimately make their decision. But one of two things, several things can happen. But consider this. Donald Trump may be found, they may find, no, presidents are not immune from criminal prosecution after they leave office. The argument being, perhaps you can't criminally charge them while they're in office, but once they're out, whether through impeachment or otherwise, fair game criminal charges. I disagree with that. I believe that would fundamentally destroy the system of checks and balances and the presidency itself. Now, they may actually come out with another ruling, which I think more people need to consider. The Supreme Court could rule a president is absolutely immune from criminal prosecution during or after their presidential term for the things they did in their official duties. That being said, Donald Trump's actions on January 6th were not within the scope of his official duties as president. Therefore, as it pertains to these charges, Trump is not immune. It could go that way. And of course, they could always just say, of course, Trump's immune. January 6th, Donald Trump did not incite an insurrection. You're lying. You're insane. Trump told people to be peaceful and go home, and he never told people to storm the Capitol. He never did. Certainly, there's arguments he could have been more forceful more quickly, but I think that makes a lot of assumptions about what happened that day. All I can really say is, I don't know. While Donald Trump was speaking on January 6th, people were storming the barricades at the Capitol building. So there's no way Trump could have even known it was going on to tell people to do it or not to do it. They say, but Donald Trump said, fight like hell. Well, yeah, Democrats say that all the time. These are not real arguments. So, of course, this Supreme Court hearing will be massive. If the Supreme Court decides that a president is not immune from criminal prosecution, and the argument here, I want to make sure I stress this because this is where the far left is lying about everything. The argument is you absolutely can criminally charge a sitting and former president. Well, I shouldn't say sitting. You can't criminally charge a sitting president. They have to be impeached and convicted. That is to say, if a president commits an act that is considered by Congress to be a high crime or misdemeanor, they can file articles of impeachment. They can then vote on those articles. Should it get a majority in the House, it would be passed off to the Senate, where a 2/3 majority is required to convict. If you cannot do that, you cannot criminally charge. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. The Senate and the House. These are the representations of the people and the states. And if they do not want the president convicted and removed, we don't do it. You do not get to weaponize the federal government at the executive branch to go after a president after the people and the states said no. And here's what happened. And you say, oh, but it's political. The Republicans would never convict Trump. Then too bad. If we are to exist in a world where an incoming president can criminally charge his predecessor, it's civil war, baby. The only thing stopping the brink of insanity is that a president will not be criminally charged by his political enemies. If he's convicted in the House, if he's impeached in the House and convicted in the Senate, you basically have the majority of this country's representation saying he did bad. You then criminally charge him and lock him up. Typically, even then, you'd remove him and that'd be the end of it. But if he really did something wrong, then so be it. Joe Biden sending the DOJ to criminally charge Donald Trump over this. And it's at the state level. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different charges going on. Documents, case, etc. It's not just about J6. This is Congress saying no, the system of checks and balances, and then the targeting of a principal political rival. It's plainly obvious. But you know what? You're here to laugh, aren't you? Let's listen to the arguments from Rachel Maddow, and then I will debunk these claims. In this clip posted by Colin Rugg, he says, far-left MSNBC host Rachel Maddow works herself into a panic and claims Donald Trump will remain in office for life. Oh, it's hysteria. I have to imagine Rachel Maddow's a liar. She's lying to you. The argument that if Donald Trump is told that he's immune, he will never leave office and he can commit any crime he wants, it's a lie. The argument is Trump must be impeached and convicted. If Donald Trump commits a crime in office and laughs about it and tries to stay in, he will get impeached and convicted. But let me play the clip from let me play the clip of Rachel Maddow for you. You can hear it for yourself.
If you think about the court as the Supreme Court of the United States and a rational actor and a decent one, that was a reasonable supposition, and it just turns out they're not bad. Incremental bit of progress here. The important question here is not whether the Supreme Court is going to decide that Donald Trump and all presidents are immune from prosecution for things they commit, crimes they committed while they were president.
That actually is the most important thing. That will resonate in this country forever. So, that is the most important thing.
I mean, it would be fully insane for them to actually side with Trump here, right?
It would not be. What Rachel Maddow is omitting from her argument is that Trump's lawyers are saying you must impeach and convict first in Congress before criminal charges can be presented to prevent political weaponization. And they are correct. Imagine a president gets elected, and then you have various states and you have rogue operators or partisan operators in the DOJ going after him while he's still in office. Imagine he is running for re-election. I mean, the scenario we're seeing right now. Joe Biden gets elected, tells his AG, stop being, I forgot what he called him, a studious something or other. And then Merrick Garland says, okay, we'll bring criminal charges. And this effectively serves as a political weapon to stop Donald Trump from getting reelected.
Conclusion that we can arrive at now based on what they have done without having to wait for the ruling is that they are ensuring that Trump will not face trial. And when they inevitably rule that presidents aren't immune from prosecution after they leave office, what that will tell Donald Trump, if by then he is president, is that he can never leave the office of the presidency. Right. And if he is voted out in 2028, he cannot leave office, and he is willing to he is welcome to commit any crimes he wants to, as long as he is still president, in order to ignore the result of that election and stay in power for life, because otherwise he is going to go to prison when he gets out.
I think she's a liar. And same thing with Chris Hayes, because anybody who actually listened to the arguments and saw the arguments, in the lower courts, I will say it again for the millionth time. Trump's legal team is arguing, in order for a president to be criminally charged, they must first be impeached and convicted. I don't know how many times I got to say it. That is a sound argument. Barack Obama killed an American citizen. Abdulrahman al-Awlaki was a 16-year-old who was born in Boulder, Colorado, lived in San Diego, and was visiting family in Yemen. Barack Obama ordered a drone strike on a country we are not at war with, on a civilian restaurant, killing probably not just Abdulrahman al-Awlaki, but many civilians in the process. This was the murder, the extrajudicial assassination of an American citizen. And don't forget Anwar al-Awlaki. Now, they argue that Anwar was a jihadist fighting against the United States. And, okay, you want to make an argument about the military tactics and treason and sedition, wartime, perhaps. But Anwar, as I understand it, was a preacher of jihad. He was going to these other countries and advocating for this stuff. Well, Barack Obama killed him. You want to have an argument about war and crime? Fine, let's do it. Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki, the 16-year-old, did nothing. He did nothing. When questioned, the Obama administration said it was an accident. Okay, well, if you accidentally shoot someone, you go to jail for that. Or you'll still get criminally charged depending on the circumstances. And if the argument is Barack Obama, in all his good graces, made a serious mistake and the intelligence was bad, where is any accountability? I would love to see him criminally charged for the endless amount of civilians that were killed under the Obama administration. But I recognize the argument that he was acting in his official duties as president. And unless we get a conviction in Congress to impeach, and you can impeach after a president has already left, this is a fact, you cannot criminally charge him. I don't like it in this context, but I accept it. And I have been screaming for justice and accountability over the killing of Abdulrahman al-Awlaki since it happened. But here we are. I understand that if Donald Trump were to go in and criminally charge Barack Obama for this, it would create very serious problems, as Barack Obama was signing off on what he believed to be legitimate intelligence. They believed they were, this is what they claim. They believed they were targeting a terror leader, and they failed. Well, here's the problem with that, and the reason why criminal charges should follow, but there needs to be an impeachment inquiry, an investigation into what he did, an impeachment and a conviction. You can claim you're targeting a terror leader, whatever, but you bombed a civilian restaurant in a country we are not at war with. Okay. That's just, I mean, if a police officer was chasing a guy, a car that they thought was, a bank robber or whatever. And so the cop decides to ram full speed into a restaurant, killing random people. We're going to lock him up. So, but I agree. I think there has to be an impeachment in Congress first. Now, we're not going to revisit 10 years ago. So Obama just killed this kid and no one bats an eye. But now they're falsely arguing Trump incited insurrection and other nonsense when he never did. In fact, Trump told people to go home. At worst, the crime Trump, and I say figurative crime, that Trump could be guilty of is he didn't say enough. But that's not criminal. Here's Chris Hayes in his unhinged splendor.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Today, the right-wing dominated Supreme Court gave Donald Trump a gift.
Oh, did they?
The biggest possible gift anyone could give him. The biggest possible gift they have given him yet. Remember, Donald Trump, of course, participated in a violent coup to overthrow democracy.
No, he didn't. Trump was speaking at the Ellipse when people stormed the barricades at the Capitol building. So not only was he not there, he was actively speaking about electoral politics when people took action without him telling to do so.
The first president to set himself squarely against the constitutional order in history. He rallied his supporters to storm the Capitol and steal an election he lost. And he was indicted by...
You see, this is insane. You can argue Trump rallied his people, but he never told them to storm the Capitol to steal an election. They just make this stuff up.
Our Justice Department, representative of us, the people, on 4 federal felony counts by a grand jury for his role in that insurrection. Well, today, in a single-page order released at 5 o'clock, the court agreed to consider Trump's manifestly weak claim that he is immune from prosecution for the January 6th insurrection because he was acting in some senses in his official capacity as president. But the order itself is not the story here. It's the timing. It all comes back to the timing. Let's remember. The court case, the trial of Donald Trump over his effort to subvert the constitutional republic, was originally set to begin days from now in March.
Let's pause here. Let me break something down for all of you, and most of you probably know this because you've been paying attention. Some of you may not. It is Trump's sworn constitutional duty to investigate and seek to remedy claims of voter fraud. That's a fact. He is the chief executive of this nation. He handles federal level law enforcement. If there are claims that there's widespread fraud, irregularity, unconstitutional actions, Donald Trump must investigate this. Now, you can come to me and say it's a conflict of interest for a man in law enforcement or otherwise to investigate his own election or oversee it. We should not have that. Fair point. Then I've got questions about Georgia and perhaps Arizona, where in Arizona, a Democrat oversaw her own election, and in Georgia, a Republican did his. So here's the fact. If following the election, Donald Trump, of course, believes he won. He can't believe it. And so he's certainly biased. But when the people come out and they file lawsuits and there are charges and there are civil claims and electoral lawsuits being filed, Donald Trump has to investigate that. Imagine the issue was the election of a governor or something. And there's lawsuits to the courts, federal government, and lawsuits to the federal government. Evidence of federal crimes like interstate ballot trafficking in order to affect a state's election. And the president's like, no, we're not getting involved. I can certainly understand at a state level, you might say no. But the issue there is, should the feds be involved, they must be involved, right? If it falls under federal jurisdiction. So herein lies a conflict of interest for Donald Trump. But that being said, this hasn't been adjudicated. Many of these court claims were thrown out on standing issues. Many of them were dismissed because they were stupid, and many of them were won. But ultimately, we didn't get a strong resolution. Why? The Supreme Court refused to take up the case Texas v. Pennsylvania pertaining to constitutional issues in the 2020 election. Donald Trump certainly has a lot to gain by working law enforcement to pursue many of these claims that I get, and that's a conflict of interest. So what's the answer? Well, the Supreme Court needs to decide. That's our checks and balances. It never happened. Chris Hayes, what say you?
All that is on hold because the Supreme Court wants to hear oral arguments for Trump's immunity claims. Ready for this? 7 weeks from now, April 22nd, 2024, making it a real possibility, a likelihood, in fact, that Donald Trump will not face a trial for the crime of attempting to overthrow the American Republic, will not face a jury of his peers until after the next election in which he is the likely Republican candidate.
Oh, so there it is. Trump is going to win. He's going to win the election, and they'll do anything to stop him. My friends, if you're someone who believes that Donald Trump did wrong and should be criminally convicted, then I want you to contemplate this. You on the left, you Democrat voter, you hate Donald Trump, you think he's a bad guy, and you're allowed to. I can respect that. I disagree. I think Trump is bad for a lot of reasons, but I think he's certainly better than Joe Biden. Understand the implications from a third-party perspective. Step out of your role as a Republican or a Democrat and recognize if Donald Trump, the frontrunner, who is admittedly, according to Chris Hayes and many others, expected to win this election, if he is removed through criminal prosecution, the American people know what he's accused of, right? They know this. This is not a secret. They know this is all going on, and they are expected to vote for him. Understand what that means. The Biden DOJ will remove the frontrunner with all he's been accused of by force. How can this country survive if you do that? Look, if the American people decide they want Donald Trump, knowing full well what he's accused of, that's their choice. That's why I say I don't think Biden should be impeached today. Maybe 3 years ago for the Burisma stuff, fine. But let the people decide. The election is less than 8 months away. Let's see it.
I want to be crystal clear here about the import and significance of today's news, because I think a lot of the reporting has missed this. What happened today? This one-page order looks anodyne, right? It is an unmistakable sign from the MAGA majority of the Trump-created court that they are with him, that they are going to use their power to make sure he does not face trial in an election year for attempting to end American democracy. Until today, it could have gone either way. It was genuinely unclear whether...
Just listen to how he speaks. Donald Trump will not face trial for attempting to end American democracy. I mean, this level of hyperbolic, just partisan insanity. MSNBC is a trash network. It's fascinating because even Fox News doesn't go that far. But these people have genuinely lost the plot.
Whether they were going to give him what he wanted, whether they were going to put their shoulder to the wheel on Donald Trump's behalf. Everyone has always understood the substance of his legal claim here is meritless. It lost at the district court level. It lost unanimously in the appellate court.
Wrong.
3 judges, one of whom is a Republican appointee. It is bad law under the Supreme Court's own precedent and jurisprudence.
He's wrong. Certainly, Trump has lost up till now. He's right about that. But it is not a bunk argument. It is a basic argument. And you know what? I got to be honest. I could go either way with it. I think it's silly to try and lock up Donald Trump when he's the front runner and everyone knows it, because that's just going to rip this country apart. But by all means, open the door to criminally charging a president, and I will be knocking on the door of every Republican governor and AG and DA to bring up criminal charges on Barack Obama, and I'll do it with a smile on my face. I will use every ounce of my being to get Republicans, I doubt they will, to be completely honest, because they're so pathetic and weak, to bring up criminal charges against every sitting Democrat politician. Let's go, baby. Open those floodgates, because I'm game.
The point was never to win on the merits. The point was to make a time-consuming Hail Mary pass to attempt to escape accountability.
All right, accountability. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you this from Wikipedia, the second impeachment of Donald Trump. They mentioned that Trump was impeached. He was not convicted for incitement of insurrection. And without a conviction, Trump was acquitted. He was acquitted for the charges that they are now trying to bring up against him that Joe Biden is. Let me stress this. Donald Trump was impeached on January 13th, 2021, 1 week before his term expired. The fourth impeachment of a president. 10 Republicans joined in. They say Trump was indicted on August 1st, 2023 for the conduct for which he was impeached. Well, hold on there a minute. Trump was not convicted. The votes in the Senate were 57 for guilty and 43 not guilty. The result was an acquittal. Do you know what acquitted means? When someone is accused of a crime and the threshold is not met and they acquit you, it means not guilty. It does mean something different, but it basically means like it's not enough. It isn't. The serious ramifications of to this country, if they were to convict Donald Trump or to try and remove him despite the fact he was acquitted, I mean, this is insanity. He's been acquitted already. The claim should be, I believe the Supreme Court needs to hear 2 arguments. The first being that a president is immune from prosecution within their official duties as president. If they leave the office of the president, get in a car and ram someone, they're not immune to that. That's not an official duty as president. But Donald Trump, everything he did in terms of the election, you'd argue, is as a federal officer, he absolutely should. There's a conflict of interest. Fair point. However, he's already been acquitted in Congress. If they are to try and they are bringing charges again, despite his acquittal already, you've got an argument for some kind of double jeopardy. In the political process of checks and balances, the Senate said no. If Joe Biden decides unilaterally then to sic his DOJ on Donald Trump, he is telling all of these other states, F you, your voice is meaningless. And what do you think happens to this country when our systems of checks and balances is crapped upon? So here we go. Trump was already acquitted for this. Now you can argue, yeah, but it wasn't in a court of law. Well, no, but as a political officer, they said acquittal, not guilty. He didn't do it. They did not have enough. And that was political. I want to show you a couple videos. These videos are very important because people often don't believe it. There's a man, actually, I got to make sure I pull this one up too. A man who was acquitted. First, we'll start here. As for I have to do this, because I hear too many stories from people who say, I tried telling a family member about the video where the cops are holding open the door or saying, I respect what you're doing. And they're like, no, that's a lie. That doesn't exist. They tried to tell them that cops fanned people in the building. No, they didn't. That never happened. Okay. CNN. Man who said January 6th was magical acquitted. Here's a headline for you, CNN. Man who said he was waved into the building acquitted. You see how they do this headline? A federal judge on Wednesday found Matthew Martin not guilty of 4 federal misdemeanors related to trespassing. Martin, who worked for a government contractor before his arrest following the riot, successfully argued that a U.S. Capitol police officer waved him into the building. At least one video played during the trial appeared to show an officer moving his arm in a waving motion. Call the judge a crackpot, I don't care. A waving motion. There's a video that a judge agreed with that showed a cop waving people into the building. For this, a man was, he's not the only one who got acquitted either. It's just the principal story I like to use. A major milestone in the massive January 6th investigation. Watch this video. Here you can see people on the steps to the Capitol. This is not where the riot was taking place. Now hold on there. You see in this clip, as the camera pans, the door is being opened. But this door over here was already open. So what happened here? How were these doors just open? As we move forward, you can see as the people begin to walk in, the first group of people to enter the building. There's no one else. There's 4 or 5 people at the door. As the camera, the person filming, begins to enter, what do we see? Police on both sides, left and right, allowing people to enter, making no attempt to stop them. In fact, one officer actually tells them he respects it.
You can disagree with it, but respect it.
I disagree with it, but I respect it. Now, hold on. Here are the officers on left and right standing by, allowing people into the building. The argument we hear from the left is that the building had already been overwhelmed, so the police stood down. Is that so? In this video, another one, you can see the police officers open the door, back up, and hold the door open for what is quite literally a J6 protester walking in, raising a fist. Right here. Here's the cop holding open the door. He could have told the woman no. He could have stopped her. But in fact, what are you supposed to believe? As you are walking in with your hands raised high into a building, facing no resistance from police, and the cop actually opens the door. He's holding it open. Can we just zoom in here? Here's the cop. I really want to hammer this one in. This officer right here, you can see him. He goes to the door, pushes it open, and then he holds the door open as a protester walks in. So first, it is the police who open the door. Okay, let's make some arguments. Why didn't the cops pull the door closed? Why didn't 2 cops stand in front of it and say, no, you can't come in? Why did a cop say, I disagree with it, but I respect it? What's the argument here? And now this person with a MAGA hat walks in as the cop holds the door open. And once again, this officer right here is looking at the crowd and holding the door open. And then they all walk in. One guy has his hands up. These people are being peaceful. They're just walking into a building. There are many more videos like this. The left likes to make the argument the police were overwhelmed. They had no choice. So they held the door open for him. What? This officer right here is staring at the woman in the red hat, makes no effort to stop her. He walks backwards as she's waving. He allows her in, and then he waits a moment before following behind her as another officer holds the door open for the remaining protesters. Let's play Steelman Devil's Advocate. The cop holding the door open is only holding it open because the other cop is waiting. Why did that cop wait? Why didn't he push the woman out of the way and say, hold on, no, back up? Why didn't any of the cops try to stop them from entering the building? You can argue all day and night about the riot in front of the building, and it was bad. Yes, agreed. But hold on there a minute. If people are storming the Capitol on one side of the building, and they're smashing cops and screaming, and the cops are screaming, I can't breathe, Should you not make every effort to keep the other doors closed wherever you can? For what reason would you say, let's hold the doors open, allow them in, make no effort to stop them? That way they can flank the officer on the other side? That makes no sense. What we have here is not an insurrection. It was a riot, and it was a bad one. And we've seen riots in the Capitol building, and we've seen them in the Senate and in congressional buildings, and they can get bad. On May 29th, 2020, far-left extremists firebombed the White House. Let me do this. May 29th, 2020. I make sure we get all this stuff right. Let's pull this one up. The George Floyd protests. Let me just do images. YouTube will get pretty mad at me for this one. Let's do May 29th, Washington, D.C. See if I can find those videos of the firebombing at the White House. I mean, these videos are nuts. I'm just going to pull these photos up. Military, police, George Floyd protests in Washington, D.C. Amazing. Setting fires to vehicles. Let's see if we can find the overhead. Let me do this. Aerial view of D.C. George Floyd riot. Because I know there are people who don't believe it. No matter what you do, you tell them, you show them the photos and the videos, they do not believe it. All right. Here's an image for you. This is an aerial view of the fires and the smoke above Washington, D.C. Let's do St. John's Church. Actually, I think that's probably in the Wikipedia page. Let's just jump back to the Wikipedia page. And let's do church. Before the curfew went into place, multiple arsons occurred, including attacks on St. John's Church. Donald Trump, the sitting president, was forced into an emergency bunker. They firebombed a guard post on the White House grounds. All of it is bad. We do not have a May 29th commission. These people are psychotic. They're liars. This country is on the verge of being ripped apart. But my friends, I could probably talk about this for 2 hours, so I'm going to wrap it up. You get my point. J6 was bad. People who are violent should be criminally charged and prosecuted. As for what a riot determines. 7 years, 20 years, these are insane charges. The Democrats are wielding power to crush people while claiming they're the good guys. They're trying to criminally prosecute. I'm sorry, they are prosecuting. They're trying to imprison the main contender for the presidency. I will say it again. The American people know what Trump's accused of. They've seen the videos. They want him to be president. The Democrats know the only way to stop him is to crush him under the weight of the law with trumped up charges. Pun intended. This country is on a dark track. But I'll leave it there. Comment, let me know what you think. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.